why don't you give us a quick overview on the program that you are planning to bring to Vancouver?
So, this program I play for a while already. I decided to actually play it a bit more than usual. Usually, I play a program just for one season, and here it's already the second season where I continue playing this program. I think it works very well. I had like very strong responses from audiences and presenters until now. This program displays like the three same composers
Mhm.
in both parts, and I kind of thought I want these composers to meet through music that didn't have a chance to meet in life because they were like different, completely different times, different generations. You had Beethoven, end of 18th century and beginning of 19th. Then you had Chopin, that was actually publishing his first opus of Etudes when approximately a bit after Beethoven died. And Fauré was born in 1845, so only a few years before the death of Chopin. So they absolutely had no chance to meet.
Mhm.
But I think that their music actually meets in some points, and I wanted actually to take the hand of the listener for a journey involving the music of these three major composers and showing that there are more bridges between them that one may think at first listening. I like to actually use a recital program as an opportunity to create connections between the different pieces. So
Mhm.
here, like key relationships in each part. The three composers are Beethoven, Chopin, and Fauré, and I wanted to show different shades of their
Mm.
art. So the first half of the program is very much around the E major minor key. So you have the Opus 90 Sonata of Beethoven, very special in two movements. One kind of desperate, very extreme in its expression. Simple, like not so many notes, but extreme. It explores like a big range of the piano. It shouts, it screams, and then goes back to more gentle feeling. And the second movement that sounds almost already like Schubert, with
Mhm.
like very soft cantilena, like a love song, a very gentle love song. The two movements, as always in Beethoven music, they are based on the same musical material, if you look well at it. Um, but the first movement is like in a minor shade, and the second movement in a major shade. Like he wanted to tell a love story, not
Mhm.
his love story for once, but the love story of his friend, aristocratic friend, to whom he dedicated this
Mhm.
sonata. The Chopin scherzo that closes the first half is the only major key scherzo that Chopin wrote. It's an absolute masterpiece of the late Chopin, very, very refined in the way it's written. There is counterpoint everywhere. It's actually much more refined than it seems because, of course, when you look at the score like a bit superficially, you see like a very like wild, big scale scherzo in ABA form with Barcarola in the middle and everything. But when you look really at how it's written, how the voices mix, and
Mhm.
how everything actually you see a motif and then the motif reversed that gives another. It's extremely well made, extremely like
Mhm.
a little jewel of symphonic music written for piano. And with a beautiful C sharp minor barcarola in the center. So this is for the Chopin scherzo, and I opened the first half with the Fauré preludes that actually have a very very special played a very special role on my musical path because this is that set of pieces that decided me to record all Fauré music for Sony 4 years ago. So I discovered it late in my life because I'm a crazy sight reader. In my teens, I sight read a lot of music, not having the technical means to do it, but I sweat on so many pieces. I was sweating just sight reading and trying to get all this repertoire in my head somewhere.
Mm.
So, but a lot of repertoire. But strangely, I stayed very far away from Fauré. I read a bit of it. I was not so much pleased. It was very awkwardly written for the piano,
Mm.
not so comfortable, and I didn't understand his harmonic language, even in the early pieces. I was very challenged. I didn't see where it was going. I was finding it a bit like almost bad taste, almost a bit like uh, swamp.
Mm.
harmonic swamp, you know, a bit, how to say this, a bit melting, not
Mm.
clear. It was missing clarity for me. So I didn't have, I had no key to this music, and it stayed very far away from my interest for years. But during the first pandemic lockdown 5 years ago, I I had some time. For once, I had some
Mm-hmm.
time touring crazily, but just to have some time home. And this is the moment when I actually decided that okay, I will open the piano music of Fauré and see what there is there. Um, and I discovered there is much more than I thought because I was thinking, I was counting on maybe like Ravel, Ravel catalog, you know, like 2 hours for
Mm-hmm.
piano. No, there
Mm-hmm.
is 4.5 hours of music written during like more than 50 years and with a big evolution of style. So straight I was thinking, oh, is it the French Scriabin? Starting like very romantic, very Chopin, and then moving towards something that is almost atonal.
Yeah.
And it's the case. And from a piece to another, you can really follow him develop a language that is more and more, I would not say obscure, because this was the first impression I got. But then now I think that it's extremely clear. But it's just that he removes progressively all that was the charming in the first pieces. In the late pieces, he removes this kind of charm. So it's not captivating. It's not caressing you uh, the way our hair grow. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
caressing the other way around. It's a bit rough harmonies, more cold sometimes, but it's absolutely incredible music and extremely precise, extremely fascinating about the writing and the subtlety and all the colors. It's completely unique. So for me, the set of preludes was a game changer in my approach of this music because in these 9 pieces, Fauré shows all the best of his mature style. You have everything. So the harmonic complexity, the counterpoint. There is a canon, for example, one of the preludes, the sixth, is a perfect canon in octave, which is a wonderful tour de force.
Mm-hmm.
You have like pieces that are more harmonic, pieces that are more virtuosic. The second prelude, for example, or the eighth. The eighth is kind of a toccata, like a perpetuum mobile, and the second is also a perpetuum mobile, like an etude on the trill. So you have like both hands playing extremely fast trills, and all the preludes are very short, like 2 or 3 minutes. But the whole set is really fascinating because the
Mm-hmm.
so much contrast, so much diversity, so much wit in all these pieces. So I decided to use it as a strong opener for my recital program.
Mm-hmm.
Second half also opens with Fauré, this time with theme and variations, which is probably one of his few piano pieces that are the easiest to approach. A lot of people coming from the audience that telling me about their experience of listening to the program told me that they found some similarities with Schumann, with Brahms even. It's true that the theme of this theme of variations is very regular. It's quite square, about like the metric is very square. It's built on a scale of C sharp minor, and the harmonic progression is like the circle of fifths, basically. So for the ear, it's easy to follow. And the theme is appearing very clearly in all the variations. And you can actually get very clearly how Fauré transforms the themes like rhythmically, harmonically, melodically. It's very easy to follow. So the audience, not knowing so much about this composer and his music, most of the time, audience is a bit impressed, a bit like scared about
Mm-hmm.
discovering something that they don't know. And here, the themes, the way it's developed through the variations, it's actually quite ear friendly, I would say. So it was important for me to balance the impression that can give the preludes in the first half because the preludes are wilder. But
Mm-hmm.
somehow having the theme and variations helps understand also what's going on in the preludes.
Mm-hmm.
All the audience people with whom I talked about were very happy about this actually. They perceived very well what I did with
Mm-hmm.
this program, balancing with the two big pieces of the set of preludes and the theme and variations. After the theme and variations, I play one of the hit standards of the piano repertoire, which is the cold like Moonlight Sonata. It's not a Beethoven who chose this title. It's like a typical publisher
Yeah.
thing to tell more. So it's the second sonata of the Opus 27. that is a set of two sonatas, the first being also like quasi una fantasia.
Mhm.
And this is the main thing, is that this sonata is quasi una fantasia with a very unusual form. It starts with a slow movement, then a very short intermezzo, and it ends with a crazily, like very rough and noisy finale. I got asked, several times actually by some of my friends, some audience members, like, why are you playing this? Because we know you as being fascinated by less usual repertoire, exploring, like Szymanowski, Mettner, or Magin. Why are you playing this standard? Why? And even my manager, he told me, but why? Why are you playing this? Everybody plays it. And I said, no, because from time to time, I reread the whole set of Beethoven sonatas. I don't have it yet fully in memory. I have a lot of them. I maybe half of them are here, but still, I put the big Enlay on my music stand and I go through all of them sometimes. I say, okay, now is a Beethoven moment. I will read all of them again. And
Mhm.
during one of the sessions, I realized something about this Moonlight Sonata. I really realized something that I really wanted to share. Um, So maybe a way of performing this piece that has not so much been explored yet. So here, maybe it's the occasion to talk about my approach of interpretation because there would be, I'm sure, some musicologists, some teachers, and some music lovers and critics that would say, "What is he saying? He considers that there are several ways of interpreting. No, there is the right way. That is the way of the score of the composer and of the pupil of the composer and the pupil of 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 the composer that you may have a masterclass once in your life when the man will be 90 years old and barely hearing anything, but you can say in your resume that you have worked with the man that had heard a man that had heard a man that one day had heard Beethoven, and this is what is right. I'm sorry to say, I don't believe at all in this way of dealing with our art. What we have is a score. We have a score. We have the biography of the composer. We have notes. We have like plenty of researches. In the case of Beethoven, in the case of Chopin, we have plenty. Fauré, less. But Beethoven, we have plenty. We can read his own letters, how he liked to be performed, how it. So I would say, okay, first of all, let's look at this.
Mhm.
Let's look at this before listening to what a teacher or what a critic or musicologist will say. Just look at the letters first. And first of all, very first of all, look at the score. When I read on the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata, Adagio and Senza Sordino, it's very clear for me. It has to be played Adagio and Senza Sordino, and we've just I just when I read it again, I just read it with the score like the way I was that would be like the most how to say as least as how to say not interfering with the score as less as possible.
Mhm.
Looking at this and playing. Okay, what's going on here? There are three voices. The bass that goes down, the triplet, that is actually the harmony, the continuum, the rhythmical
Mhm.
continuum and the harmony. And you have this funeral march on the top with the dotted rhythm. Okay, this is the musical informations. And then I just realized, but okay, I cannot, I heard it. Then when I listened to some versions, it was always too fast for me because there is something about the balance between the harmonic information that is quite dense in this movement. A lot of things are going on harmonically.
Mhm.
There is the weight of the bass, of the bass, and there is this funeral march on the top and the soprano. And somehow I needed to play it slower than I
Mhm.
are used to somehow. And then it sounded more suddenly like an organ chorale.
Mhm.
And suddenly the whole piece made more sense to me. I said, and this is also how I realized that, but it's the same musical content than in the finale. It's just organized differently, but it's
Mhm.
exactly the same. The C sharp minor arpeggio, even some harmonic progression. There are two pages of the finale that reproduce exactly the same harmonic progression, and it's
Mhm.
not only like a 2-5-1 functions. It's really like the whole progression of a passage that is exactly the same. So it was. he knew exactly what he was doing, obviously.
Hmm.
So I kind of had this vision of this piece being the two sides of the same medal. It's really like the two faces of the same character with like this interlude in between that is also made out of the same musical information, but from a like let's take a break, you know. The
Hmm.
first movement was very intense, very extreme on its own,
Hmm.
and the next one will also be. And we just have this little break, a bit like in the Shostakovich Fourth Symphony, you know, when you
Hmm.
have like elephants, like in the first movement and last movement, and in
Yeah.
between you have little things like just to joke around and take a breath. Even if in Shostakovich a joke is never completely a joke, or it's very heavy sarcasm.
Hmm.
But uh, but but here in this sonata, I just had to say, yeah, you know, then I realized suddenly, but if it's played a bit faster, then it becomes pretty. Then it becomes just this promenade on the lake and the moonlight, and it becomes like, for me, the whole musical drama cannot be if it's so.
Hmm.
So I was looking then for a tempo. Of course, if it's not largo, it cannot be largo. It has, but with the triplet energy, you can keep some movement, but still have let the harmony express itself with enough weight, you know. And the problem is that if it's too like to-da-di, 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 to, there is no weight anymore, and you just concentrate on this kind of trance of the triplet, and nothing goes on. Well, it's just like I started playing and really like no sordino, but really like sotto voce, like very, very
Hmm.
little sound for the arpeggio, just enough for the harmony to, like a Alberti bass, just for the harmony to be there, and the bass and the soprano. And I started to hear music that I never heard before.
Hmm.
So I allow myself to share this vision. Yes, it is personal, but I don't think I betrayed the score. I'm looking closely to the score. I don't want to just replace Beethoven, but I don't think that anything would be against that in what is written on the score.
Hmm.
But I would really like to I did already. I like to share this vision with the audience because I think that there is a way there in
Okay,
that
okay. We'll be looking forward. And the you're gonna
ballad.
be closing with
Yeah, it's the third
so
ballad, the third Chopin ballad. So I'm kind of like finishing with the because in all my recital programs before I'm on almost reaching the four scherzi and four ballad. I played all the other ballads before. So now is the last one is the one that I never played before. And I also had kind of a revelation with Chopin recently. I was a crazy Lisztian before. I was in that sense, not in the way that I'm good at playing Liszt, but just that I was obsessed with Liszt. Liszt all the time, like Mephistopheles, Second Ballad, Dante Fantasy, Sonata, all the big the masterpieces for piano and the etudes as well. I was absolutely crazy about his language, and I always kind of felt comfortable playing his pieces. It was not I was not like really scratching my head about like how would I perform this piece with Liszt. Of course, it's hard. It requires practice, but once it's in the fingers, I always felt comfortable with this music.
mhm.
Chopin, contrary, completely. I always was in love with this music, but could not find a way to perform it. I could not find some comfort. I was always it was always too many questions. Too many
Mhm.
questions. Should I do this? Should I do that? What would be the most true? Because it's extremely intricate. You know, you have this voice dying, and then you have this other voice, and you have all these things, and how to dose the sound between the fingers. It's extremely subtle and refined. And a piece like the Barcarolle, for example, I remember I became crazy just studying this because it's putting this in your fingers is one thing, but then deciding what to do with it, oh my goodness.
Layering.
And trying to take care of all the informations that are there and at the same time to make it spontaneous
Mhm.
because the late Chopin was very much like this, like in the third sonata, you know, it has to sound like improvised somehow, which is oh my, or the Polonaise fantasy, you know, how to do this, how to achieve this with a music that is so subtly arranged and crafted.
Mhm.
I could not find. And actually, recently, um I decided to just go nuts go nuts, like thinking this is an improvisation, and I will try to actually think that the notes are like words, and I would try to speak this music. So as if I would say some words. So where is the accent? Where is the down point, and how
Mm.
to? I won't think about like how should I build this phrase. I would just try to sing and say the phrase with my
Mhm.
fingers. And what happened doing that is that the timing became for me playing this much more flexible. So I just avoided being concerned about, oh, I have to fall at this moment. I have to make the phrase fall at this moment. And if I miss it, everything is dead. I stopped stressing about that. I just carried carried the phrase and tried to just follow it
Mhm.
and be confident. And that's how in the third ballad I really um, reached the point where I consider this beginning, the two first pages, as uh, improvised introduction, because the first moment when the rhythm really starts to with this tarum tarum tarum, but before I would really there are so many things happening. And here again, like in Beethoven, the harmonies require some weight, and the weight you can get with the time, with the timing. So, like progressively opening, that is actually the main idea of the whole piece. And here, the top voice should stay, and here you have the wonderful full tone scale with the appoggiatura. And somehow, if it's played too much in rhythm, like you don't hear anything of the music. You don't hear the suspension. Of course, if it would be an orchestra, probably the players would have to play with there would be less flexibility. But to have these orchestral colors at the piano, to have these different layers, to have like, because here obviously like it's the winds. The top voices are the winds, and then of course it's a cello here. So just the different the balance between the winds and the cello, how to organize this and how to find the right weight of the sound, you will find with the timing. And I become more and more radical with this
Mhm.
when there's someone in front of me like saying, "But how can you be so free with the timing? It's impossible. It has to be. Otherwise, if we don't have the rhythm, we don't have the meaning." I said, "No, it's the contrary. If we don't have the right timing to create all these colors and everything, then you cannot sing the phrase, and the music doesn't make sense." And
Okay.
here we are back to the conversation we had about the freedom of timing with the classical music, is that the classical music, to express what it has, the best it has to give, there is this special kind of sense of rhythm that cannot be square. This is a fascinating talk we had with my girlfriend recently about Glenn Gould. Uh, because I re-listened to the second version of the Goldberg, the 81, if I'm not mistaken. I am personally crazy about the first version, about the live version that I find absolutely extraordinary and so spontaneous and so warm. I was not so crazy about the second one, but I re-listened to it and I was just mind blown by the ideas, because probably I was not ready yet before to understand, but now I understood, like keeping the same tempo throughout the whole cycle of variations, not doing any reprise, no repetition, just putting all the Goldbergs in 45, 50 minutes. And I said to my girlfriend, like, but how is it possible that that he is so expressive, so lyrical, but being so metronomical at the same time? How does he achieve that? How can this sing as much as that and be smart as much as that and touching as much as that, being so regular? And she smiled at me because she's a crazy Gould fan. She knows a lot more than me. And she told me, Try an experience. Actually, put headphones and put the Gould version in your ears and play at the same time. And you will realize something. And I tried it, and I realized that there are a huge amount of micro timings. You don't when you listen like the whole thing, you don't pay attention. But when you listen extremely carefully, like playing playback on it, you realize that there are like little fractions of time
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. And of course, this is how the music gets so expressive.
Mm-hmm.
How expression is carried through. So this became, of course, I realized even more how Gould was a genius of a very special kind. But this is what I try to achieve. And I'm sure that most of the time I don't reach it or I don't ideally reach it. But the same in the final movement of the Moonlight Sonata, that it cannot be. It has to have some kind of motoric feeling, so some kind
Mm-hmm.
of clarity. But the main thing is that it has to be this huge tsunami wave.
Mm-hmm.
The rhythm is more like the two bars. Yeah, and the real rhythm is actually to carry this whole line from this whole wave from down to up, not losing the character, not losing the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Not like otherwise there is no music there. So but it's difficult. I'm still looking for the right words, for the right way to express all these things. I'm constantly thinking about all this, and
It's
but what I can tell you is that I became kind of more radical with what how I treat the rhythmical element in the
mm,
music for the sake of harmony, most of all.
mhm. It's so interesting. You're so passionate on the stage, and you even more passionate when you talk about music